Hello and welcome to this review of my Monterey K104 keyboard. This is a donation from a viewer. Thanks again, mate. The Monterey K104 is among the most well-known clicky Alps boards, although it also came with a variety of other switches, most famously the Alps mount clicky version of the second generation SMK switches, which earned their moniker Monterey switches after Mousefan first reported these in a Monterey K104, even though Monterey didn't make those switches at all. The K104 is most commonly found with white and very occasionally with blue Alps, but this one actually comes with a model of Alps clone switches named Type OA2 by Alps.tw, and I don't think it's been documented before that the K104 could come with these. It's not completely clear who made this switch, but they are closest to an old version of Tai-Hao APC switches, which are one of the very few Alps-style switches that are still being manufactured today. However, a bunch of parts have changed over the years, including what's in my opinion one of the most important ones, which is the clicker itself. See, many Alps clones, including the modern-day APC switches, use a phosphor copper-based mantis foot style clicker, while genuine Alps switches, Matthias's, and old APCs use a wide steel click leaf, and in my opinion this is the key to many of the better-feeling Alps clones. The wider steel click leaf gives, in my experience, a more refined key feel compared to the often bulky feel of the mantis foot clones, and this is why I've commented before that I actually quite like the OA2 switches, although they don't feel quite as refined as, for example, white or blue Alps in my opinion. They're a little bit lighter, so I can see how some people might actually prefer them to Alps. I have a keyboard here with an apparently undocumented type of mantis foot clone virtually identical to Xiangmin KSBC switches, except for the color of the slider, and while these blue clones feel much lighter, extremely light in fact, they don't feel quite as satisfying as the OA2s, and I think it's in large part due to the click leaf. The difference in sound is also obvious, although they don't sound quite as nice as complicated Alps, which appear to be somehow unbeatable in this department. They sound better than mantis foot clones. Now, the board I showed earlier is much too flimsy to provide a decent sound comparison, but this old Ortec with Type T8 switches, also a mantis foot clone, is a much fairer match. Listen to this. If you disregard the almost overwhelming plate ping on the Monterey, its switches sound much deeper. Particularly the sound of just the clicker is a lot higher pitched on the mantis foot switches, which makes sense as the clicker is a lot smaller. Here, let me demonstrate without trying to bottom out on the switches. Now, this keyboard is actually new old stock with the original box even, which I always love, and to my knowledge this model isn't known for commonly having electrical problems, but I found a few nonetheless. The first is that the lock lights keep flickering on and off when you move the board or tap the case. In fact, when they're on, it even happens when you're typing, such as I'm demonstrating now, with all three lock lights on. Sometimes they stay off and then it pops back on for a bit, or it acts like it's a rhythm game or something. It's weird. Second, the board occasionally ghosts, and by that I mean actual ghosting, so not the stupid rollover thing that companies keep trying to make you believe it means, even though it doesn't, but real ghosting. In other words, it occasionally registers keys that you're not pressing. I've even seen it happening when I wasn't using the keyboard at the time. It happened infrequently, only about half a dozen so times in total for the week I was using it, but still it's annoying, and it remains on until you press the key in question as well. The build quality of the keyboard is kinda average. It uses a pretty thick metal mounting plate and a roomy but okay plastic case with Monterey's telltale faux grille at the top right, but the electronics don't look particularly well done, with some pretty shoddy solder points here and there. It weighs about 1,470 grams, not counting the cable. Now, for those of you who prefer the Imperial system, I used an appropriate calculator to convert that for you, and as it turns out, 1,470 grams equals 3 red beads and 2 blue ones, so a tidy figure. It has an AXS switch at the bottom for selecting your protocol, big flip-out feet, a fairly standard coiled cable with a 5-pin DIN plug, and the model sticker that says it's model K104, even though the FCC ID ends in K-104. It also has some of the most incongruous date stamps I've ever seen, so it appears to have been made from old parts. The top case is from 1991, while the bottom one is from 1993, and the controller is from 1994, but I don't think it's younger than 1995 because it doesn't have Windows keys. The keycaps are thin ABS with printing that strongly resembles the printing seen on Acer caps, which I'm still not really sure what it is. It has elements of lasering, silk screening and dye sublimation, but it doesn't appear to truly correspond to any of them. One other thing I've noticed, the layout, which is what I've named the Monterey layout, as Monterey were particularly prolific users of it, although it's also found on some Focus keyboards. It's characterized by having a big as enter, as well as a full-size backspace key, and moving the backslash to between the Alt and Control keys. Similar is the Focus layout, which instead uses a split right shift, and the Northgate layout, which is a combination of both. The Monterey layout is very useful. It's one of my favorite layouts, to be honest. Even if you're a fan of ANSI, you might well like it a lot. So all in all, if you overlook the strange electrical failures this one unfortunately had, and despite the rather meh keycaps, it's pretty decent overall, I'd say. The switches aren't bad, it's built somewhat ruggedly, and the layout is excellent in my opinion. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.